Everyone, welcome to the May 2nd, 2018 Zoning Board of Appeals public hearings. We have four cases on the agenda this evening, so bear with us. We'll try to get through them as quick as we can, but we'll start with, we have a continuance of case number 6-18 for 1327 Main Street. So, welcome back. I remember last time you were here, we were down to a few issues and a couple of things you were going to do, so.
Yeah, when I was here last, I had addressed most of the town engineer's comments.
Right.
We wanted to get in front of the planning board for a conversation. We have done that. I've submitted to you a revision. Minor details and notes. The one thing of substance that we talked about at the last meeting was taking this driveway, and I had it at 26 feet wide at the mouth of the street. We reduced it to 20 feet. Beyond that, we added some trench drains at the entrance for drainage. We added some signage details. Really no substantial changes to the plan or the layout or the main concept of the proposal. If you'll recall, we're here for a drive-up special permit. The Reliable Dry Cleaners is now in the adjacent property. They want to move into this new building. And they, just like they have over here, they would like to have a pull-up door where you could pull up and you could drop off or pick up your dry cleaning. There's just going to be a little roof overhang over that. We have one-way circulation coming in from Norfolk Street, exiting out on Main Street. We had our meeting with the planning board, and I think we're all on the same page that the design is good. And Maggie has issued a letter with basically just 3 conditions, which are kind of our normal conditions. I have submitted to you a draft decision for your consideration. I incorporated all of Maggie's comments into that draft decision. One was an as-built. The other one was we have just acknowledging the fact that we have to go to Mass DOT for a curb cut permit for our driveway on Main Street. And the third one was comply with E911 with respect to addresses. And E911 has weighed in and decided that they will give us 2 street addresses for the 2 tenant spaces. So it won't be Unit A, Unit B. It'll be 1327 and whatever other number Maggie assigns to the second tenant space.
And just for the record, that we do have a letter from April 24th from the town engineer that has those 3 conditions in it. So DOT, the E911, and the as-built with the swing ties and all that other good stuff. So the drive aisle off of Main went from 26 to 20 feet.
The driveway.
The driveway, sorry. Yeah.
Yes.
And what was the reasoning? Oh, right.
Discussion about basically
planning,
having
right?
a little too much room there. And also I think Mass DOT will probably constrain me to 20 feet, which is typical for a one-way driveway with Mass DOT. So
That was the issue.
Right, yeah.
if we drop it down to 20, I think they would make us do that anyways.
Could they make you go less than that, or?
Unlikely. They have standard design details. A standard for a 2-way driveway is 24. A standard for a one-way is up to 20 feet.
Okay.
So I think they'll be okay with that.
Yeah. Right. Any
Good to go.
anyone? So from, we had that letter from the town engineer, and we had a letter from Tim that everything from his prior letter had been addressed, and he had no further comment to that, correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. I also took the liberty of looking at the draft approval letter that was submitted earlier. I didn't get it till late this afternoon, and I think the members all have it in front of them from the applicant's engineer, and I did recommend some minor changes to it, if the board is going to consider that this evening.
Yeah, we can get it, we could.
Consider it right now.
Yeah, and we could get to it after the meeting.
We don't do it later.
We can get to it now, it's fine.
I think we bang it out.
Yeah.
And one
No,
of
no,
the
I mean,
things,
in terms of going
thank
through the
you.
decision. In terms of going through the
Yeah.
decision now, while we have,
One of the things that is in there is we had some discussion at the last meeting about changing the special permit request from 5B14PII to 5B14QII. So there is language in there for a vote to basically for the applicant to request that change. The PII is when you're accessing from a zoning district that has more than 1,000 feet long, and we're accessing off of Norfolk Street, and the business district on Norfolk Street is only 300 feet long or so. So we had discussion about that at the last meeting about which was more appropriate, and I believe we settled in on the fact that QII was the correct special permit for the drive-in special permit. It's the same. It's a special permit ZBA for either circumstance.
Tim, do you say your comments on this are the ones in red?
Red,
Okay.
yes, Mr. Chairman.
Amy.
Yeah, I know.
Amy,
Amy's-
such changes.
Amy changes.
Amy made it.
Just a typo. in number 2 on conditions. So where do things stand with site plan?
Well, I anticipate that at the next meeting, we would close.
Okay.
That would be my hope.
When is that?
3 weeks, 2 weeks?
I would agree, Mr. Chairman, I was at the public hearing.
Because you added something in here, I don't know if Dan saw it, that any substantive changes will be reviewed by the board, determine if a new filing is warranted, so.
Yep, that's fine.
Okay, all right.
Because as you know, Mass DOT, we can't apply to Mass DOT for the curb cut permit until we obtain all our local approvals. So sometimes they want changes, so under that circumstance, we
But if
present
they
it
say
to the
do
planning
18
board.
feet, I don't think you need to come back to the board if it's 18 feet instead of 20 feet, so. Is there any members of the audience here to speak on this case tonight? See any? Any, Bob, have you just taking a quick glance through
Yeah,
it?
a quick one, but I haven't digested it.
Okay, all right,
So,
all right, well,
I don't
I
know
think
if
the
you wanna-
conditions, I mean, I think we'll have to go through and get to the vote on it, and I think the conditions are pretty, what are gonna change, maybe some of the language will change slightly, but it's a pretty straightforward decision.
yeah.
All right, any motions to entertain, or?
Motion to close the hearing?
All right,
Second.
there you go. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, you're on a roll, Sue.
Are we going,
Well,
We're going.
we're gonna make, yeah, we got the conditions, right?
are we going with PII or QII?
I think QI is good, yeah.
QII, I think is the correct.
So
Do I need to amend? I don't have that stuff. Do I need to amend? Yes.
it's on the draft decision. It's this motion here.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do this. I
All
don't know what the heck.
I'll make a
Don't we
motion,
have to amend the application?
and we are, that's what the first one
But
is.
that's what.
I'll make a motion to amend the application, for case 6-18 by changing the special permit request from section 5B table 5B14 PII to section 5B table 5B14 QII for the zoning bylaws.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, and then I will, make a motion, to grant a special permit under 5B, table 5B14 QI of the zoning bylaws to allow a drive-up window door for the proposed dry cleaners at 1327 Main Street.
Second.
All right?
You have a bad one.
We'll discuss I guess, with the following conditions. Site improvements shall be made as depicted on the plan entitled 1327 Main Street Site Plan. Applicant shall obtain a state highway access permit from Mass DOT to the extent that such approval is being required by Mass DOT. Utility as-built plan shall be submitted to the engineering department, including swing ties, and the applicant shall satisfy the requirements of E911. And finally, number 5, the applicant shall obtain site plan review approval from the planning board, and any substantive changes shall be reviewed by the board to determine if a new filing is warranted. That's the whole motion, right?
And the board we're referring to there is the planning board, not,
That's a good question.
Yes, it is
It's
the
this
planning
board's
board.
decision, so it'd be the zoning board.
Yeah.
And the planning board
so
would,
okay.
So how would that, in practice work, right? Say there was a change that was deemed I mean, how would we even know? It would be an agenda item on something if it came back to us?
Or would the building inspector make that initial
Yeah,
determination?
that's,
Right.
exactly.
exactly, because he'll have to go to the building for a building permit.
Right.
The-
Yeah.
So all right, so,
So then he'd come,
The building commissioner will look at it and say, that's a dramatic change from the approval letter, and then he will send the applicant back to us for potentially a new applicant if he
I
determines
would
that
rec-
it's.
Yeah, I
Yeah, I
don't
would
think-
recommend that condition be amended to reflect the zoning enforcement officer
Yeah.
rather than the board,
Yeah.
since I think he's more in the position of
Yeah,
making
that
a
way if he
determination.
determines he needs to come, I would say it would be a new filing or an amendment, right? And, I mean, I don't know if
Depends.
it's, yeah.
At that point, it would have to be new filing, because this hearing would be closed and the decision's already rendered.
Right,
It's
it
very
would be a
unlikely
new
this will
filing,
happen.
right, yeah, no, it
Right,
is, I
right,
was just thinking practical.
Yeah, I think procedurally
I
you
don't
go
think
through the
it's
building
gonna,
inspector.
yeah, I don't think there's much here to change, so,
So,
all right,
so on the two conditions, because it's repeated, similar for the Mass DOT as well as the planning board, I would make those both determined by the zoning enforcement officer.
right, yeah, on number two, on 2 and 5.
On 2 and 5, yeah.
What's that, Gene?
She's got one, she didn't get one.
Oh. All right, all right, that motion still, I guess, with all the conditions?
Works for me.
I'm looking through the, I'm
Alright.
looking through the findings.
Well, we could go through the findings after.
Deliberate, then vote, right?
Well, we're voting and then we're doing the findings, either way, doesn't matter.
No,
Yeah.
doesn't.
No, I mean, you know,
One down the
I
street.
understand, they've kind of laid it out for
Yeah,
us, but
yeah,
I
yeah.
agree. I mean, you know, to discuss or deliberate in support of the project, it does change the curb cut, it reduces the curb cut.
Reduces the
I think it
curb cut.
improves the traffic flow in, you know, in the highway district.
One
I-
down the street.
I think the use is consistent with the purpose of the area. You know, I don't think that it's gonna generate any more pedestrian or vehicular traffic than is currently in that area. You know, again, the request is for a drive-up aisle, so that into itself does not impose any hazard with respect to noise or dust. And I think this is a business, traffic business, is consistent with the character of the zone.
Yeah, I think at the business for that lot isn't gonna be, that use of a drive-through, it sometimes could create, but for a dry cleaning business, I don't think it's a problem. In other situations, a drive-through there may cause a
Maybe an issue
problem.
because of the corner,
The corner,
right?
but
But
here,
this low
I don't.
volume, I think.
Yeah, low volume spread throughout the day, kinda not like a busy certain time, so. I think he covers that, it's not just to generate significant quantities. Yeah.
I'm deliberate.
What?
I'm deliberate.
Oh, you're very deliberate. That's the word.
Deliberated.
Any, John, any other comments, or?
The property that's off the actual site owned by the applicant, the sidewalk, who's gonna be putting that in? Is that, they're doing that?
In the layout?
In the
The
layout.
applicant,
The applicant in the town layout, they're putting in the sidewalk and improvements there?
yes.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, that'll be nice improvement to the
Yep.
corner there, which is
Yeah,
a
it
pretty
looks
run-down
good, yeah.
corner.
It
Yeah.
looked good, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that will definitely improve it. Building there is kinda.
So we have a motion and a
Yep,
second?
motion, a second, someone who seconded it.
Yeah,
All right.
subject to the revisions to the conditions that we talked about.
Yep.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? No. Unanimous?
Any input on the draft decision, changes, edits?
I don't.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, I think it was pretty straightforward, so, and I think there are a
I
couple,
agree.
yeah, I think the couple that were added, and I think the couple that Tim added, just, as he always said, Dan will say it does not generate significant quantities, but he really means he doesn't think it will generate significant quantities. Thank you. Pass this down. All right. moving on to the next case, we have an application from Norman Ivy? Ivy, sorry. Case number 8-18 with respect to the property located at 100 High Street. It's in the zoning district rural. It's an application for a variance under section 6B1 of the zoning bylaws to allow a 20 by 12-foot deck with stairs and to legalize the existing house location. Welcome.
Welcome, how are you?
Welcome.
My name is Chip Ivy. The homeowners are back here, Dave and Gina Westcott. I brought some pictures of some existing conditions of the existing deck and the surrounding areas.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
The house was built in 1980.
Yep.
The deck that you see there now, we just want to basically replace it. This reason we just want to go with a 12 by 20. More rectangular, more usable space versus the two-tier. There is, we don't know how long the deck that's there has been there. There was no permits pulled on it. I checked with the building department. Obviously, when the house was built in 1980, something needed to be there because there's two sets of egress doors coming off that second level.
Pretty straightforward. So your idea is to demo that, both that tier deck and just build one deck at the higher tier or the lower tier? or
The higher tier.
The higher tier.
Yeah,
And
and
then
then
the steps
do a-
coming down from that.
Do a stairway with a couple of landings because it's such a long.
Yeah, it's a high, yeah.
Make it comfortable.
And unique to this is the existing dwelling appears to be 28.2 feet to the rear lot line and 30 feet required. We could get into that after, but it was built in 1980. So, we have that provision after 6 years. It's kind of becomes, you get the status of a non-conforming building, and you're not changing any of the structure. So we could talk with Tim after. So I'm not sure that's needed here, but I also don't think think you have an interesting lot. So. Not
Sorry,
sure.
how old was the deck then?
No, the house.
I know, I heard
But
that.
they're talking about the, something that the house is, they want relief on the house, even though the house isn't changing.
Right.
Right.
And you're saying because the house was built more than 6 years ago under the current law, it becomes a pre-existing non-conforming.
Right, so you're saying the deck.
How long ago was the deck built?
He doesn't know.
Oh, we're not sure.
Oh, yeah,
Well,
this
is it
deck,
more than 3 years?
6, right?
oh, well,
That's
it's,
why they get rid of it.
it's rotted.
It's old and
I'm
rotted.
leading you in the right direction.
Most of it was old and rotted wood last year.
It needs to be replaced, it's
Yeah, I
really,
think so,
it's
yeah.
really unsafe.
Yeah. Well, either way, I don't think it's, it's a unique lot, that's for certain. So I guess we could tackle the deck first. So what you do like here is you're making it more conforming, because it's going from 19 feet to 19.9, right? I mean, 19.9 to 19, I guess it's a little
No,
closer.
it's staying the same.
Yeah, no, it's actually getting, going from 19.9 feet to 19 feet is what we're saying, right?
So,
Yeah, so it's a little closer.
so what we see on the plot plan, 19 feet from the sideline, is that existing already?
I think that's a rare line.
That would, the existing deck, right at that corner, the existing deck comes off the house 10 feet. The proposed deck is gonna come out 12 feet. So my assumption would be the original deck that's there now is probably a little bit more than the 19 feet.
Yeah, that corner.
Yeah.
See, it's hard
So
for
you're
me to
gonna bring it
see,
in.
I know, there's a
because
set-
I don't see existing.
there
and I
is there is a set of stairs.
The closest point is 19.9, that's what he put on there. It's the stairs coming down is actually closer than the corner of the existing. In that red, those kind of stairs that are in the red,
Yes,
that's the stairs you can see on the plan going from the top level down to the lower level,
correct,
right?
yes.
And then that corner isn't the closest point to the sideline. The closest point is the bottom of the stairs. Yeah, that's,
Existing
yeah,
proposed.
yeah, right, yeah. So this point is closer to the sideline line than this point.
It's not showing, it's not showing, I don't see, I see proposed deck, and the applicant said his words were, it's basically a replacement, yet he just said that it's currently 10 feet, and now the new one's gonna be 12 feet.
So, you can see the outline in black of the existing deck. It's hard to,
Is that true?
Yes, do you want me to point it out on your plan?
yeah, that's the
Sure.
closest point. That's 19 to the new. Yeah,
So what's existing?
The
The
new is
existing
going to be
right now is
Closer,
right
yeah, closer,
this
yeah, yeah.
corner, right there,
Mhm.
that corner, is this corner right here.
Okay,
Right here.
and so this piece is coming off,
Yeah, this piece here
Yeah, so you see
is this one
stairs.
drawn in,
so that's gone.
There.
that's gone.
This corner-
Yes, that
But
would
you
be
now,
gone.
This
it
corner
said
is
it's
closer to the
currently 10
sidewalk
feet,
line
but you
than
said
this
it's
one.
going out to 12 feet?
Correct,
That's
yeah,
this-
right now,
that's
it's
that's
out to here is
19's
10.
to the new one,
Okay.
19.9.
And so the new one will be 19 feet from the sideline?
Which is leaving. Correct.
Okay.
Which is leaving.
But this is coming out,
A
he
little
said.
bit, yeah. So it's getting less here and like a 0.9 greater there. So,
Because
Now,
20,
what's the requirement here?
pretty straightforward. Everyone clear? Or, yeah, a little confused still.
That's my natural look.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. While we're talking on, town engineer, from town boards, she asked the board, asked the applicant to clarify why the impervious cover is decreasing by 20 square feet between the pre and post-construction condition, as the plan and the application do not address this. And it is requested that the board advise the applicant to verify the location of his septic system if possible prior to installation of the deck stairs in order to not damage it through constriction of heavy, vehicular traffic construction. Fire didn't have any comments. Police didn't have any comments. Conservation said it may require filing if there's additional clearing or grading. Planning had no comments. And then we'll let Tim give comments since he's here. And the Board of Health, the project would require sign-off by the Health Department, all Title V setback requirements met and the system flagged to prevent any damage to it during construction, so. Stuff that you'd wanna make sure you did anyway, so. Tim?
I don't have any issues with it, I'm presuming, unless, are there any butters here?
We were gonna, yeah, I was gonna,
Okay.
yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, I don't see an issue with it. It was obviously constructed poorly or at the wrong time, at the setback at 28.2 feet. I understand the request to memorialize, or as far as I would presume you're having issues when you go to refinance because of that? Is that why you want the existing setback being not correct?
On the existing house?
Correct.
I think that was, the building inspector, the zoning, Dave.
Yeah.
He recommended that.
So you haven't had any issues with the past trying to get refinancing with someone picking that up? Usually that's in,
I'm sorry,
Yeah, very rare, I mean, on a house refinance,
How long have you
very
owned the
rarely are
house?
they
how
on
long?
a zoning
About
certificate.
9 years,
Surprised.
10
Yeah.
years.
Yeah, they usually don't look at that. They would if it was an encroachment, something was encroaching, but.
I've seen stranger things. But I don't have a problem with it all, Mr. Chairman. I think that it does require the variance.
We can find out if the deck was there when they purchased it, then
Yeah,
we
yeah,
would know. Then I'd feel more comfortable just saying it's
And
legal.
name and address when you, was the deck there when you purchased it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you,
And name,
It's a mess
would-
now, it's
would
falling
you mind,
apart.
would
Just
you mind
coming
coming
up,
up to the mic? We have a couple of questions for you. And just give us your name and address, please.
Gina Westcott, 100 High Street.
And so you said you purchased the home in what year?
It was about, we've moved in about 9 years ago.
Okay. And you said that the deck was there when you moved in? And about how old was the house, or do you know how old the deck was prior to when you purchased it?
I have no idea. It was there when we moved in.
2000, that was 15, you transferred the deed. When, did you purchase it? 9 years ago?
About 9, 10 years ago. I'm sorry, I don't have the exact date, but it's been that long.
What? I mean, you know, I think, I mean, it's non-conforming now.
I would know my exact date.
Yeah.
Oh my
Is
God.
there
Oh
any,
my God.
anyone here on this case? I don't think so, but figured I'd ask, all right.
I think it can be on the database online.
What's that?
He says the database for all
Yeah,
properties.
I see it, yeah.
Oh, okay.
All right, yeah.
I remember when we went.
No, I'm good.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I don't know, it doesn't, you know, I mean,
Sitting with me.
it's a little closer in one spot, and it's a little further away in another, and it's a very unique shaped lot, and I think it's, you know, it's the finding that it's not more, substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the existing nonconformity, and I'd be hard pressed to say that lot there, you know, who's your abutter, right?
I'm sorry?
The abutter there.
Because I think one of the comments asked, can you explain the difference between the existing coverage by the structure and the proposed? It just shows in your map.
20 square feet less.
You're 20 square feet less. I can speculate what that's from. Is that the removal of the lower deck?
Where are you seeing that? Is that on the, from the engineer?
At the top. It shows 1795 and the proposed 1775.
Yep. Oh, so we're less square footage.
My guess would be because the existing deck has that lower deck that sticks out that much further.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't,
That's what I would have guessed, but.
it does, but it also doesn't make sense based on the plan, but it's hard to, you know, without getting into, does this area, then you have this landing area, this stair, it's hard to, you know. It's a stamp plan, and he obviously did the calculations.
Do you have real plans?
What do you mean real plans?
Something with like a plan? I think there might only be one. Do you guys all have plans?
Yeah, there's a plan attached to the picture.
It was attached to the
No,
original.
He had like a real plan. This one? Attached to what? Yeah. Oh, the pictures. Okay. Maybe I didn't get it. Nope, there it is.
So we do have a stamp plan, so on this, you know, clearly it wasn't they added to the right themselves, cause he proposed an existing's on there, yeah, so.
I think we
Yeah.
had a comment that was questioning it.
Yeah,
so
no,
I think
yeah,
that's
I
it.
guess, yeah. I don't know. Any thoughts up here? Comments, John?
No, it's just increasing the non-conforming because it's going out,
Yeah.
2 feet compared to what it's existing.
Well, it's really making the nonconformity from 0.9 feet bigger, because the lower part of that deck is actually closer,
Right, he's losing the part that's,
19.9.
right, which is, but now it's going to now it's going to 19, so.
Right, yeah. So it's, it's 0.9 closer.
Right.
And at the closest point of the existing versus the proposed.
And of course, the reason for that is a 10 by 20 deck is really long and narrow. At least 12 makes it a little bit more manageable as a deck.
Mhm. I don't, you know, given that we don't have any neighbor opposition or, and that it's a very unique shaped lot to begin with.
We'll assess that. Who is your neighbor that is to this side of your property?
You mean Peter Previtt?
This is Capace.
Peter Previtt.
Yeah, this big piece of land right next to you,
Uh,
right?
It would be,
this
as
one,
you're
I thought
looking
you
at the
had
house to the back, where the deck is the closest.
The deck is the closest to the Previtt house.
Okay.
It's what?
And approximately how close are they from that property line?
I can't even.
I have a,
Right next to you, there's a driveway going back there, right?
yes, and there's a house, that's what I took pictures of.
Yeah, that's really far away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very far away.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, those are the Bulger family. It used to be owned by Alan Rockwood years ago, and Bulger's bought it.
Okay. Okay, so the point being is that what this deck is closest to is not somebody's living room, play area, it's closest to their driveway. So when the intent of the bylaw is for people not to build structures that are close to the edge of their property, that it could impinge on the rights of the people right next to them. In this case, what your deck would be closest to is their driveway.
Correct.
True, but it's still not very close either.
Yes, it's not very close to their,
I
to
guess.
their house, yes.
Yeah, there's an old plot plan that shows, I think. what
I
you-
say it now,
Right,
yeah, thank you.
Yeah. That's a big lot next door.
I'm good.
Yeah, all right. I'm good too. Any other? It seems pretty minimal in terms of increasing the nonconformity. So, and I don't think it's, it's not,
It's a variance.
is it?
Yeah, all right.
It's a variance.
It's a variance.
Okay, we're knocking the deck down.
Because they're not going as a pre-existing non-conforming because the deck
Oh,
wasn't.
cause they don't know when it was built,
Right.
yeah.
And even the house.
Even then.
Also, just for consideration, because it's not an increase, so the fact that it's closer in terms of the current deck is not material, because we're not talking about a special permit on a pre-existing non-conforming. It's a variance to whatever they wanna build, period. And I think they included both the house and the deck.
Right, and the house, I don't think really,
They don't,
is
they wouldn't
appropriate
have
to
to
do.
because it's pre-existing non-conforming.
Right.
But if we included it in the variance permit, then they would be constrained by any conditions we impose by the variance, because they would be receiving the benefit of the variance.
on the house.
Right, so, I mean, we,
Yeah, I mean, but you know, there's no change to the house.
today,
Right.
Right, but I mean, we're not, right, I mean, I'm just saying it's not like a change, you know.
so I would
what-
say,
you're just-
I'm proposing that we include the house in the variance as requested, and that we impose a condition that there would be no further construction or expansion of the existing deck or home closer to the property line. We
To
just
the
don't-
rear, to the rear property line.
Right, we don't want any increasing of the what will become a non-conforming.
Yeah, I mean, you could still could build off it to the, you know, so
Yeah.
it's conforming to everything else, yeah, yeah.
They couldn't anyway, though.
They couldn't anyway, right.
But I,
Well, they'd still have to come back to the zoning board if they
Correct.
wanted to.
correct, yeah.
If they wanted to,
But I think you're saying, note in the decision that we're saying,
Yeah.
this is it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cause
Right.
it's a variance.
yeah.
I don't think it hurts, but they can always come back.
Understood.
Yeah, they could, right.
They can always amend the
Yeah,
variance, I mean, they can
America,
request.
can always come back.
Yeah, all right, fair enough, so,
Just can't get back.
I guess we're talking the unique lot shape of this, you know,
Mhm.
lot, which has one side yard 70 feet and the other 278 feet. And the shape of it, so, and you probably got obviously some, obviously I should go into that. important here is the shape of this lot.
Yeah, the orientation of
The
the
decision's
house
empty.
is such that.
The decision's empty.
Well, it'd
And
be
the
a hardship
is
because you couldn't have a
relocate the
deck.
house.
Yeah,
Right. Well, you can relocate the house.
yeah.
Because now we've got the house included in the variance. To bring it into conformity, to not grant the variance, means that you'd have to move the entire house. That's a fair amount of hardship.
Or they'd have to change the doors if you wanna push the deck down further.
Oh, they make it.
That's
but that-
another thing.
Even then.
But their
it would be-
application
yeah.
is for the variance
I
to
know,
be
but
the
I'm
house
saying
too.
the
Yeah,
other way,
Right,
yeah.
to move it.
so it's a hardship either way.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, all right. Fair enough.
Do we need anything more from public hearing?
I mean, do you guys have anything else? No one from the audience is here. We asked and.
No?
All right.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing for case number 0818.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you.
you wanna get to this?
Yeah, but
Let's-
Yeah,
don't-
let's,
Yeah, no, you don't have to say anything, but we're gonna do the decision now.
Yeah,
Get it over
I-
with. All right.
yeah.
All right, well, you were so good in creating this, variance for
That's a
a
variance.
non-conforming house that's not changing, so.
I-
But the structure is changing, so.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that, we're looking at this anew, right, because it's a variance. So we're not looking at this, as if they were going to construct this today in this location. And I think, the material part is this triangular shape of the lot where,
You bored him. You bored him.
thank you. Yeah, so it's the triangular shape of the lot, the fact that the structure is already constructed. It would be a hardship to require them to relocate the structure or to reconstruct the doors so as to relocate the deck.
Yeah, I mean, they have a deck there. It would be a hardship to build it anywhere else. That would be setbacks because the house is.
Yes.
But is the house, so is the house actually a variance too? How is the house a variance?
I'm
though?
not convinced either, but
Yeah,
Why, because you're saying it's not required because it's older than
correct.
10?
It's been there so many years. I mean, it's clear it was
1780.
constructed that way.
right?
No,
The
but
house,
I-
the house. It's not like they asked to do an addition to the house, like it's not, I guess
They
maybe.
asked to
I-
legalize
I-
the house in the application.
Yeah,
I
I'm
know.
with Suzanne.
Totally.
There's a question, do
but
they
it-
need a variance?
But it is legal now. is
I
what
think
I'm
the
saying.
board should just make the determination that it's pre-existing non-conforming, and this variance for the deck will memorialize the pre-existing
Well,
non-conformity
we
of
could,
the
a
existing
condition
home.
of the variance could still be the exist, I don't know, it doesn't matter, cause it's,
No, it
it's
doesn't.
technically, it's
It's
legal, I
like-
think, now, so.
I think it's perfectly permissible
It's
for
not
us to
legal, but it's
grant the
non-conforming.
variance as applied. I mean,
Yeah.
you can say, do they need the variance? Because they have other
Well, when they
avenues,
bought
such
the
as a
house.
pre-existing non-conforming? Maybe, but you can still grant it as part of variance.
Fair,
I mean,
yeah,
It just reduces some of the gymnastics on the paperwork. I'll leave it
We
as-
could say that,
that's fine.
we could have, the decision could read both ways, to the extent this is a legally non-conforming due to, 48 section 6, it's legally non-conforming to the extent relief is required, we're hereby granting a variance such that, you know what I mean? We could sort of address it both ways if people would prefer that.
Right, no, I think it's fine to leave it that way, I'm just thinking if there's a situation where it would
Says it
be,
right in there.
invite you to
Build
do
the
it that
house.
way, right? Like, somebody came and wanted a variance on something they did, I guess if if it's non-conforming, should you just get the benefit of a variance for?
Well, the difference is.
I guess,
Changing
Right,
in
if
the
you-
future,
Let's
it
think
has
if-
implications for future changes, like if you give them granted variance, it's much more
Mhm.
confining, whereas if you say it's legally non-conforming, then they could come back and ask for a
Correct.
special
Right.
permit to
Right.
extend it
Right.
in the future, they'd still have to come back, but it would still, it would be an easy, it would be less.
it's fine, yeah, I mean, you can certainly, just not particular to this case, just in general, like on a case, you're making it more burdensome by giving the variance, but it's fine, you know, yeah.
No, they asked for something,
they-
and we're just giving them what they asked for.
Well, I'm not sure if they actually asked for it or not, that's all I'm
They
saying.
asked for the house to be legalized.
I don't think that came from a request from them, so that's all I'm
It's
saying.
right there.
They said,
it's in writing.
they were told, I know.
They were told by
Yes,
they.
yes. So I don't think they were knowledgeable enough on our zoning bylaws to ask to legalize, or had any idea if their house was or was not conforming to zoning.
Did he not say he talked to Dave?
Yeah, he did say.
Yeah, that's how
He
it came
did.
out, yeah.
That's, yeah, so
Yeah.
there you go.
Yeah, so Dave thinks he needed it legalized, so it's fine, we'll grant him the variance.
And
I mean, it just says to legalize it, I mean, like, you know, what does that even mean, you know?
Yeah.
Right?
Um,
Yeah,
It
yeah.
says in there.
But no,
I
what is
didn't
that,
write
what
it.
provision is to legalize it?
I know, it's crazy.
So, anyway, all right,
Not good term.
I like Craig's wording better than the application, so.
In terms of conditions, because I was wondering about the fact that they're putting the pad of the stairs on the
I saw that.
septic tank.
I'm not worried.
So, I mean, I think we had both Maggie as well as Health Department comments that how they want it handled would be, you know, I would say add a condition,
Yes.
Yeah, but,
Um,
which addressed however they. what was the
read
wording
as
they-
Robin or whoever in the Health Department
Yeah. and
provided it.
yeah.
It was.
To verify the location of the septic system prior to installation in order not damage it through construction or heavy vehicular traffic was from Maggie. From the
Right.
Board of Health, it said, yeah, that they had to get Board of Health, so I think we would just condition with Board of Health approval, I think they. The project would require a sign off by the Health Department, all Title V setback requirements met and the system flag to prevent any, that's the one we wanna go with, right? They've gotta get, prior to issuance of the building
I
permit.
would say Maggie's statement,
Yeah.
because she includes that it has to be located and flagged, I believe Maggie, and then I would
Well, they
say
said,
Robin's.
yeah, they both, and system flag to prevent any damage to it during construction,
I
so.
think we can just put the language
That's fine,
from
right
both.
from them, that's right,
Yep.
yeah, that's there's two conditions.
Yeah.
So the Maggie's, and,
yeah.
yeah,
Just write it together as one condition.
yeah,
So it's one condition?
that's fine.
One condition, right, because it's all dealing with the Title V.
So just write verbatim Maggie's and Board
Yeah,
of
yeah,
Health.
yeah.
Yep. That's one condition, and then, I think the other condition would be,
Don't come back.
no expansions or
Don't come back.
alterations that, would increase, or, that would, yeah,
Further encroach into the.
further encroach of the side yard setback. Yeah,
It's a rear yard.
rear yard setback.
But I think, yeah, that, I mean, I would say, yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
There's
make-
no further expansions that would
Any
encroach on
setbacks.
the,
Right.
Well,
But do
and
you really
then,
wanna,
say-
well, would that- or
do you really
create
wanna do
any.
that though? Cause that could handcuff a future board.
No, it's just the rear, it's just, it's no encroachments, but it's, I think it's given in it that, you know, if you, it would be another variance if you came back, but we're just
Right.
stating the
That-
obvious.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, but they could certainly, if you wanted to in the future,
they could amend the condition
Yeah.
of the variance, or they could, you know,
you
Or we
could, in
could
the
say-
future, someone could knock it down, you could build it, as if you conformed to all the setbacks, it'd be a moot point.
oh,
Yeah, yeah.
You
No,
knock
and
it
here
down
you
to-
could add on, say, to the left of it, it wouldn't be making that rear yard any closer, so.
How about we just say that and then say there should be no encroachment without
Yeah.
further
Yeah.
approval from the board or something like that.
That's fine.
So that, without further approval from the board. So that it allows a future board to
Such
make,
fun.
to allow a further encroachment,
All right.
you know, if they were so choose.
Your language is good, yeah?
Yep.
All right.
So, and we have enough on the findings?
I think the big one here is that
Yep.
the shape, and I would also say we have no, just, on the record, no neighborhood opposition,
Including
the direct abutters.
the direct abutters.
Yeah.
Oh, I would also say that the area that is encroaching on the rear yard is adjacent to the neighbor's driveway. I mean, I think that's a reason for the decision as well. If it was next to somebody's kitchen, I would feel differently.
Right. Encroachments. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I'll make a motion on behalf of the applicant to grant a variance under section 6B1 of the zoning bylaw to allow a 20 by 12 foot deck with stairs and to legalize the existing house location as conditioned.
Second. There you go.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Sorry, I was taking a drink.
Would you have a question, Jane, or
No, I
no?
was just wondering about the verbiage of legalize the house.
No, we're not using that verbiage.
Didn't I
wouldn't.
just say that?
I wouldn't.
No, no,
I
did you
mean, I
say
just
it?
read how it was applied, so I left.
Oh, okay.
I left the
That's
language
not
how
gonna
it
be,
was.
no, that shouldn't be.
What are you saying?
I don't think we can legalize the house, so I don't know why
No,
we'd
that's why
even
I'm
say
saying,
it.
I don't know why we're saying that. We cannot legalize the house, period. We're dealing with the deck. So why would you wanna put in the decision exactly what
The-
they asked for?
The house is, not within the rear yard setback.
Just reading this.
Oh, but you're not gonna, I feel the same way, John. You're not gonna write in this decision to legalize the house.
Because we can't.
We
Do you
can't.
think, I agree, do you think though that, so the question is, are we
Should we-
granting a variance for the house?
Yes.
Yes.
We're granting for the entire property.
Okay, so
Right.
then why
So
don't we
we're
amend
saying-
the application?
I don't think we should,
Why
I
don't we
don't
vote
think
to
we should
amend the
legalize the
application?
house, cause that doesn't sound.
Well, it's not, it's a
sound-
non-conforming.
Yeah,
It's,
But we're not
so that's the
making it
difference, are we going from a non-conforming house, which is somewhat protected, to granting a variance for that house?
For the deck,
For the house, which is a different
why
meaning.
for the house? It's only for the
Well,
deck.
because it's the whole property.
'Cause that's what they asked for,
They asked for,
even though it says legalize it, that's why I said the language legalize
It's,
it.
it's okay, I'm just saying, something doesn't feel right when you're
The-
saying legalize. I mean, I never have,
I would
right,
grant
the
a
house,
variance.
the house is,
I hear what you're
the
saying.
house is within 28.2 feet of the rear yard setback where 30 feet is required. We could amend the application to read, a variance under 6B1 of the zoning bylaw to allow a 20 by 12 foot deck and stairs within 19 feet where 30 feet is required, and existing house at 28.2 feet where 30 feet is required.
A
I'd
variance
rather
for
that
both.
than.
It's just a weird thing, we've had so many non-conforming cases, no one has ever come before and said, I've got a house from the 1960s, I know it's non-conforming, but I'm just saying, but I
Yeah.
want a variance now for it. They're saying it's non-conforming and I
Yeah.
need a whatever to do something else, but that's just different than we've always done it, but that's what was asked for.
And you don't have to change their application. I mean, the application is what it is. I mean, the board can just, in its deliberations,
grant.
what you're doing now, you're just saying that, okay, we understand the home was probably constructed, in the non-compliance of zoning when it was built, and the error was probably made many, many years ago. And all we're saying, the board would say, well, we're memorializing, we're agreeing that it was done, and it's a pre-existing non-conforming as far as the zoning. The variance is for the deck.
We can.
Right, but we're
Short
talking
and
about
simple.
granting a
Short,
variance
simple,
for
and clean.
the house.
Yeah.
It's not simple and cool.
That's what they were talking about, granting a variance for the house.
There's no need to grant the variance for the house. It's
The
already
application
pre-existing
asks-
non-conforming,
Yeah,
it was,
I don't think there is for the house either.
Round and around.
it's been there so many
I-
years.
Right,
I
right,
thought
but the
we were so
problem is
close.
that, the problem I have
We have
is,
to act on it.
okay, the problem is
Will.
that this applicant went into Walpole's zoning enforcement officer, who should be knowledgeable that they didn't need a variance for the house, and advised them that they don't need to legalize it, whatever that means. But unfortunately, what he said was, they needed some relief from this board, they applied for some relief from this board,
We have to act
right?
on it.
So, there isn't a denial of a building permit or something else, it's just the advice that you quote legalize it, and that's what they've applied for.
Which is a
If we-
weird thing to
if we-
request. Yeah.
If we don't include it in our decision, we've effectively not approved, because we found that they don't need it. So I guess in a way that's, contradicting the zoning enforcement officer's opinion, that's fine, and we can, you know, issue that opinion, in the decision, or we can just grant the variance with the, as it's built, which is 28 feet, .2, where 30 is required.
That way, you know, they can't say enclose that deck and make it part of the house.
If we include it in the variance,
If it was just
you
a
know,
variance.
my fear would be is, we say that, that it's a pre-existing non-conforming under the current law, and goes back and there's some other evidence about, something about the building permit that wasn't issued, because we didn't talk about whether there was a lawful building permit, or how long ago the building was. I don't know why, or the background of where legalize it came from. I
Yeah,
think
it's
the
weird.
easiest thing would be is, and we can amend the language of what we're granting, but to just grant the variance,
For the house.
including the house, right?
It's two variant, you know, one for the house, one for the deck, whatever it is,
One
but
variance
it's.
with the two.
With the two,
Yeah.
one for the house and one part of it for the deck. It's fine. I mean, I think it's.
Whatever.
don't
All I
think-
know is we should be voting on what is the application. That's like a standard. We vote on
Right, but
what
I
is
mean,
applied.
right, it's your what's legalize it, there's no code provision for legalize it,
Right.
you know,
Well,
what's the-
if we issue a variance that permits the house at 28.2 feet, then it's legalized. Right?
then it's
Or we
got the
could-
benefit of a variance.
I don't want to throw everybody to this, we could deny the request and say.
I'm
it's
sorry, our
not
hearing's
necessary
closed.
because it's legally not conforming,
All right,
but anyway,
Go for it.
it still
again,
memorialize that in the decision that it's legal as.
It's up to the board.
I think the point is, and I think we all agree, this board cannot legalize a non-conforming
Correct.
We cannot.
house. At the end of the day, it's still non-conforming.
right.
I disagree.
And it doesn't
What's
need
that?
I
obelisk.
disagree. I disagree. So a non-conforming means that it was built prior to the enactment of the zoning law. Okay? So that's what establishes that it's a pre-existing non-conforming, meaning that at the time it was constructed,
Yeah,
it
I understand.
conformed.
I get
Right,
that.
but
I
see,
get
what,
that,
so I
but
guess the
that-
differentiator is if someone builds a house and they build in the wrong spot, and they don't, and they need 28, need 30 feet, they have 28 feet, and it just happened,
Oh.
they have to then come in here for a variance, right, because it just
Okay.
happened. Because this is more than 6 years old, it's not.
No,
some-
I
yeah,
understand all that. What I'm saying is,
Uh,
we've had instances before, where one that's a non-conforming. And I never, ever saw in a decision that we were legalizing anything. That's my point.
I agree.
And I
think
just
the
think-
language is
Well,
not good.
I
Yes.
just think it's, I don't know, because we cannot legally legalize, we can't legalize it. It's there, it's non-conforming, we can in fact have a variance for the deck, but I don't know. I don't know, what do you think? Can I go to lunch?
No, because if they came back, or they went to the building inspector, said, we wanna put an addition on this house, it's now going to be 19 feet from the sideline. What would you, I would say that the building inspector would say, no, you have to go to the zoning board. But would yours, if we now legalize this non-conforming,
I think that-
again, I've never heard of a zoning board legalizing.
Neither have I.
No, I don't think the legalizing
And I don't
would,
think it should
but I
be
think they
in the
both
That's the word.
accomplish the same thing. The idea is that they can come back, and if
Well,
you
why
just
can't we
granted a
just say that?
variance
But why can't we just
for
say that?
19
And-
feet for the
That's
deck,
what he was trying to do, amend it.
Well, that's, why can't we,
Well,
there must be some other way that we can acknowledge it's non-conforming, period, but we don't have to give it our blessing that we're
Okay.
legalizing, because we can't.
But, okay, the applicant requested a variance, just to simplify it.
Right,
Submitted a plan.
right.
On the plan, they have two things: a deck which is 19 feet from the
Right.
setback,
Understand
and a
that.
house.
I understand
All I'm saying
that.
is grant the variance to this plan, period. That's it. I think that the way I interpret the
So that's exactly what
application
I'm
is.
saying, but do not put in this legalize
right,
the
right,
house.
Right.
of course.
Take it out.
No,
That's
we're just gonna
fine,
grant
I'm
the
happy with
variance
that.
for
So we're
whatever
gonna-
shown on the plan.
Right.
that the house is 28.2
No,
and the
that's,
deck is gonna
that's
be
fine.
19.
No, that's absolutely fine.
So that way they can't come back and do anything
My
different.
only
Yeah.
issue was
Alright.
when you were reading the conditions
Yeah.
of
I
the
agree.
decision,
Yeah.
you mentioned this, and that's why.
I
it
did,
was
because
the
I was just
issue.
reading it as it was filed,
Yeah.
but we can
You know, we can
grant,
beat these things to death legally.
I know,
I mean, you know,
so we can
Alright, I think you're fine.
okay.
amend the
we're
motion
fine.
to
I don't
grant
think
the
you-
variance,
Yes.
To allow a deck to be constructed 19 feet and a house, an existing house at 28.2 feet.
Ooh, where's the candy?
I
Yeah,
know, I didn't.
I think that's what we need to do. That's fine. It covers everyone's concerns.
Right?
Yes.
As per plan presented at public hearing.
Yep. Okay.
We good?
Everyone good with that? All right. You good? Better?
Yes, that's better.
All right. All right. I'll second it. Unless Bob already seconded it.
Nope, I did not.
All right,
Yeah.
I'll second that. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, I think we have findings on,
I would say, just on this point, maybe we should ask future applications to give guidance not to use terms such as legalize it.
yeah.
And to be more specific of what's the relief that's being granted.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right, because it's difficult for us to grant relief.
Okay, we're done.
Yes,
No, no,
yes,
no,
we're
no,
done.
no.
No, no, yeah.
No, I'm asking Tim to discuss this with, as just
Yeah.
a side bar
That's a
with
tough
the zoning
thing,
enforcement
The
officer.
tough legal term for the
Yeah.
board to consider legalize it. Yeah.
Interesting.
We've never,
Not
we've
one
never, I
I-
don't
not
think
one
we've
I would
never
use.
seen that before.
No, that's what I would use either.
So I don't, unless he's citing a specific provision of the bylaw that says
We don't know about it.
legalize it, yeah. All right, do we have enough on, you have everything else on the findings? Okay, perfect, all right. Well, they're not good anyway. All right, we're moving on. We have an application from Javier 14. All right, case number 0918 with respect to the property at 1 Rustic Road, zoning district RA. Yeah, for this one, yeah. The application for a special permit under section 5B2 of the zoning bylaws to allow the construction of a new in-law suite conforming to section 5B2 accessory in-law suites of the town of Walpole zoning bylaws. And it's an application for an appeal from action taken by the building inspector zoning enforcement officer with respect to sideline setback in lieu of rear setback due to corner lot classification per sketch 4B of the Walpole zoning bylaws. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and zoning
Good to
board.
see you.
Likewise, my name's Vahe Ohanessian. I'm the architect representing the owner, the gentleman closest to me in the second row, Mr. 14, and his son, Javier Jr. The application is for the construction of a in-law suite on the side of the property, and it includes demolition of 3 separate components of the existing structure, or structures, I should say. To give a quick visual, I'd like to draw your attention to sheet number A0.1. It's the third sheet in the set, third or fourth sheet in the set. It has some 3-dimensional thumbnails.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we're gonna go clockwise from the upper left, from the rendering 1.
Mhm.
So what you see in gray is the existing house. In front of it is a long tandem garage. There's a shed in the back left corner, and behind the structure is an addition that was built sometime after the original house, which is being proposed to be demolished in this phase. What's unique is that the main house is also going to be rebuilt in its entirety in the future phase. So when we discussed this with the commissioner, he recommended strongly that we have at least a fairly well-developed schematic of what the future main house is going to look like in order to prove that the in-law suite that we're adding is not going to be superior to the main house. It'll be secondary. So on the upper right-hand rendering, we show in a little darker than the main house the in-law suite that's gonna be built.
No.
And,
Actually, it must be.
This one.
Yeah.
Tearing down the garage,
and then just below that is
a massive building.
the future main house with the in-law suite there. So the reason for the phasing is financial. So they're gonna build the in-law suite so that Mr. Javier Senior can have his daughter and her husband live in the in-law suite, and then rebuild the rest of the house for himself and his wife and another one of his children and their family. So that's the general scope of the work, and you tell me how you want me to proceed as far as, going point by point on the
Right, so let's,
zoning bylaw,
so I'm gonna summarize and see if I'm right.
okay?
So you have this existing house and you have an attached addition, right? Your plan ultimately is to build a new in-law suite, kind of in the same area as the addition, but actually conforming to the setbacks and everything. There's
Current
not an issue
setbacks,
there, right?
correct, yeah,
The existing house is gonna stay for now,
for now.
but at some point in the future, it's gonna get rebuilt in the existing location?
For the most part, yes.
Well, it's gonna get rebuilt in a location that it wouldn't require, I mean, if you have to get relief
It'd
on
be
the
all
house.
conforming, yeah,
But that's not what we're here for today.
Correct.
We're just here for
the in-law suite.
the in-law suite. But he wanted you to show a potential future, because it may or may not ever get done. I mean, who knows, the plan's to do it, but, who,
Right.
but that's not what you're here for tonight.
Correct.
Which is interesting, because part of the in-law suite process is making sure it looks like a single family from the outside. And so, there'd be conditions on it that would, that even if you conformed to everything, you may have to go back to the zoning board in the future when you do the existing house over. I don't know, but that's not what we're here for tonight.
Could be an interesting one.
Yeah.
Well, can I jump in?
Yeah.
Um,
He had a question. Craig was just about to ask him, but go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
What's the
from
square footage of this big house?
The existing,
Yeah, no,
No, the one that's
Yeah, the
gonna go up
existing.
someday.
the new one will be just over 3,000 square feet. The proposed Phase 2 main house,
Yeah,
if I'm understanding your question correctly.
yep.
And what's the, while we're talking square footage, what's the existing house, the existing addition, and the proposed addition?
We do have a table somewhere that
The
gives us,
Tables aren't in here?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I didn't see them all.
on the left side of A 0.5,
Okay. Sorry, I didn't
Uh,
see them.
actually, that doesn't tell us everything.
Doesn't tell me the house. Oh, here's the house. It's on A06 on the right side.
There it is, I knew we had it.
Yeah.
So the existing, with the part that we're demolishing altogether is 4355.
That's everything.
Correct.
Including the
Yeah.
garage.
Yeah. Is that no, that's,
No, that's just the
No.
house.
The house and the addition,
This thing.
the house and the rear bump out that we're planning on demolishing.
and the proposed in-law suite is 1,000 square
1,000.
feet.
That's this thing.
That's that thing, yeah.
So there's a little note at the bottom of that box that says not including existing basement, garage, or shed. So we're talking about the main house and that addition in the back, in the,
And there's no garage, shed, or anything shown on here?
they're being demolished. They're shown on the initial site plan on C
Yeah, I see it on
1.1.
phase one, but they're not going up,
No, they're not coming back.
so it'll be no garage.
Correct. The new house will not have a garage.
Condition
There are two existing curb cuts that will remain as they are.
And there's gonna be no basement.
For the in-law suite, there will be
Yeah.
no basement. The new house will, part of the existing foundation may or may not remain, but if it remains, it'll be an unfinished basement.
Right. We're not. All right, so it does look like it meets that number 2 of the requirements on the minimum and the maximum. And then it looks like it meets number 4 on the exterior landings and the size of them, and that they're not in the setbacks from that chart, just if we assume this chart is, correct. It's, 33%.
Shed? Is
Non-
non-in-law suite additional area proposed mean shed?
No, there's a little area that's sort of a wedge shape between the in-law suite, which is kinked at an angle, and the main house, excuse me. And that little area is being temporarily built as a roof covering. It's gonna just be an unfinished storage area. And it'll become part of the finished space in phase 2.
Counts as square footage.
But it's outside the limits of the in-law suite itself. There's a door before you get to that little extra space.
So it'd be more part of the main house.
Yeah, you can look at the,
Or more of a connector between the
That's
two.
what I was just gonna say.
It's square
if you look at
footage.
A0.4, there's a little wedge shape between the two.
Yeah, I see it, yeah.
Yeah, that's the 86 square feet.
I wonder if the fire department's cool with that.
Yeah, I haven't looked at
I never saw anything like that.
the comments.
That has to be included in the square footage though. That
Of
was the
what?
game room, of the old gig.
Yeah, but doesn't, it's not, it's either way, I mean. it's
No, you just
temporary,
have to
isn't it?
include, no,
No, no,
it
it's,
is a game room.
Oh, no, I thought you were talking about the little area between the two.
Yeah.
I also don't see how it's an in-law apartment. This is a separate apartment. It has no connection into the.
That's exactly,
No
that's what I'm
commonality.
wondering if the
It's
fire department.
one door closes it off. It's,
Yep.
it's a,
It's another house.
it's a.
A1.1 shows
It's the game room.
a door right next to the stair in the new in-law suite, where you're outside the in-law suite at that point. And the wedge shape is sort of a temporary structure to connect the two areas together and not have an exposed space.
Well,
And it shows a new roof area on
Why is
the
it
left
can't-
side
it
of that
doesn't
same
have to be
sheet.
connected.
I think it has to be
Yeah, it has to be
connected.
an in-law apartment,
Yeah.
it's an in-law, it's not a separate house.
It's accessory and subordinate use to the residential use.
I think it has to be connected.
Why didn't they say
But
it's
isn't it
two
connected? It's
family?
connected, yes it is.
No?
Phase 1 game room extension. That door gets you into the
You
main
just
house.
told me it was gonna be just a roof or some song and dance.
Phase 1, on A11, you have phase 1 game room extension. And it's
There's a game room
connected
in
to
that
the-
corner of the main house.
Yeah,
And I believe we discussed opening up that wall so that this is now part of that space. And then it'll all get demolished for phase 2, when the new house gets built. So that, whether
Well,
they're,
forget the phase 2 for a second. If that opens up into the main house, there,
That doesn't
connected.
open up into the main house.
it sure looks like it on that A11 plan, right? The game-
That's phase one.
That's
That's what we're in. Right? Or am I missing something? Phase 1 game room extension. The game room is in the existing house, right? And it's that door on the,
But I thought he said they were just gonna put something over the top
did.
here and
He
use
just
it
said a
as
roof.
storage. A
So-
roof,
That's
so
what he
this
said.
phase run game room, that's what he just said.
yeah,
I did just say that.
I believe I misspoke because we had discussed making that a storage space, but then as I looked at the plan, I was reminded that we're gonna connect that game room and expand it into that wedge space, wedge-shaped space. A10.4 shows a future phase of where that door leads to. A10.4.
Before you build the new house, there won't be any physical connection between this in-law suite and the existing house?
There will be.
So there.
That's
there-
what A1.1 shows. There's
Ten
a,
point three. Even on the new one, there's a connection into the new house.
Right.
There's a connection into it. I mean,
Oh, no,
I know it's what he said there
yeah.
wasn't gonna be, but the
Yeah,
plan
no,
showed
no,
it.
no, that's,
So-
no,
Yeah.
I'm okay
so
with that.
the in-law suite is 2 stories. The proposed in-law suite is gonna be 2 stories. The adjacent part of the existing house is only 1 story at that level, and it'll have a new roof built just to connect that gap.
Over
And-
that
and it-
connection.
And,
There'll actually be a connection between
correct,
the existing house and the proposed in-law
in-law
suite.
suite, correct. And,
Yeah.
and below that roof will be just this wedge-shaped space that will be an extension of the, existing game room in that corner of the house.
Yeah,
So
but
the in-law suite is gonna be 2-level, and the main house is gonna be
For
1
right
level?
now.
Until the future house gets built, yes.
The one thing, just logistically, I'm struggling with is, item 4, well, it's B4, under the relevant section of the bylaw. Has the existing single-family must be constructed with a valid building permit or as evidenced by a certificate of occupancy. And then it goes on to say, where there's no certificate, where no such certificate is available, other such evidence of lawful occupancy as determined by the building commissioner. So,
It's
if,
backwards,
if,
yeah.
what?
Sorry.
So if we're looking at this effectively at the final phase, right? Because we have an obligation to see that this is one single-family house. So what I have to look at isn't phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, although that's informative. What I have to look at is what's the ultimate plan and construction, which you provided us in the final phase. The problem is if I look at that, the principal part of the house is the final phase. That doesn't have a certificate of occupancy, of course not, because it's not
Doesn't exist
constructed.
yet.
So what I need, according to the bylaw, is evidence for the building commissioner to make a determination. And how can he make a determination if it's not actually submitted plans that it could be issued a certificate of occupancy? You see what I
Yeah,
mean?
no,
It's
approved
painting
it.
me a
He
little in the corner.
Backwards a little bit, then, it's,
No,
it's
I know, I
going
know.
in the reverse way of getting, it's getting the
Right.
accessory unit, and then, yeah, no.
I understand.
Like, if
So
it was
if you-
just the existing here, it's one thing.
Just backwards for us.
So
Yeah.
this had to get approved by the commissioner before getting to you. So he has seen the proposed phase 2 house and obviously approves that it's a buildable plan at least in a schematic level of detail.
Yeah, but the trouble I have is the plan, this last phase, phase 4, it's labeled here for zoning only. But the bylaw says determined by the commissioner. So how did the building commissioner determine the phase 4 main part of the house has any chance of being issued a certificate of occupancy if that plan is for zoning board only?
Yeah.
That's what I'm having trouble with.
Well, I guess the heart of the question is, in theory, could we approve an application that
For
was
something
new
that's-
construction
That's right.
with an accessory dwelling unit at the same time? And,
I think so.
well, I don't know, I mean,
Yes, because a new plan, which includes a plan of the main house, submitted to the building inspector for which he could issue a building permit, right? Not a speculative plan, but something he could
actually issue the permit on, right?
issue
yeah,
the permit
right,
on
right.
is evidence of lawful
Not really.
occupancy to determine.
It's just
It's
a
a
word.
lot closer than what I've got in front of me now, right?
Yeah, unless it was just the existing, right? So, yeah, and
No,
we've
the
granted
first
these
case is
before, right?
existing, right.
We've granted these. What if someone, comes back that we granted one to and applies for a building permit to take the existing house? How would we, where's the safeguards
6,
to the board, right?
when owner of the property changes.
No, that's
Oh, no,
ownership.
that's ownership.
Yeah. How do we,
That's the other thing.
no,
think
I mean, if it was just the existing house, I think it's pretty straightforward. on
Right,
these, Right?
right.
They're generally pretty
But
straightforward.
we're looking into something
Yeah.
in the future, but we don't,
I almost, like, my sense is we need to look at it as an in-law suite to the existing house. Like, whether they demolish that in the future
I would
is a
agree.
future question, but
Yeah,
Right.
does it satisfy the requirements of an accessory in-law suite
yeah.
vis-à-vis the existing
Which
house?
was,
'Cause that's-
what my
That's
first
all we
comment was,
have.
you may be back here
Yeah.
when you wanna demolish that to get some type of amendment, I don't know,
Why would he tell her to put this phase 1, 2? I've never heard of this.
Who told somebody to do
Dave
that?
told me to. Did the building inspector tell you to put it in phases like this? Is that not what he
The,
said?
the phasing idea came from the
Building.
owners
Oh,
because of, they
Okay.
wanna, they have enough to build the in-law suite now, but they don't have enough to
yeah, to do the whole.
to do
Right,
the whole
right,
house.
right.
So as we approached the building commissioner with this scenario, he recommended
But what
simply
you're
show.
applying for, if you could start tomorrow, you would only be applying for the in-law suite.
In-law suite, that's
Right.
it.
So really, all before us is
Complicated
the
all
in-law
this,
suite.
yeah.
Because who knows if they'll ever do it, is what I was
And
trying
the
to
building
say. I mean,
inspector
things happen and,
said, the
you know,
building
I said,
inspector
what's the
suggested
safeguard,
that you
though?
do it so we could see.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct, that's
Right,
correct.
the building inspector is the
I
one
get
that
it,
said,
right,
yeah,
but
okay,
what's the
okay.
safeguard in the
Okay.
future, right, on any of these that we've granted? You know, how do we
Yeah.
know, when we've
What's
granted
gonna
them?
happen? I think we
on
should
any
deal
of
with
them.
the
I agree.
in-law
Right.
right now and let them worry, if we're gonna grant it, the main house as it is now. And what happens in the future,
Let's not
well,
forget that this is an appeal.
That's a
No, we
different
haven't gone
story,
through
we
that.
haven't gone to that one. It's an appeal of a determination on what's a rear and a side yard setback. But let's deal with the in-law suite first, because it seems to have no bearing on this case.
I agree,
Yeah.
all this other, yeah.
Yeah, let's just deal with the in-law suite.
And then the other thing is, even if I were to look at the final phase, I'm struggling to see that as a single family, I have to say, I mean, as designed. So,
Existing.
no, I mean, even in the, where did it go? A01.
The
I mean,
three-dimensional
so
view
I'm
on
looking
A
at
0.1.
this drawing right here,
Mhm.
Wait a minute.
you know, and I'm not seeing,
It's on a 15,000 square foot lot in a residential area. So I feel the same way you do. I mean, that is
Yeah,
it
look at this one big-
in character of the neighborhood?
No.
Definitely not.
There's a lot of issues on this.
Well,
But that's not, I mean, that's.
may I bring your
it's a
attention to
difference.
the, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna bring your attention to the existing condition right now, on the upper left of that same drawing, where you have a main house, and it literally looks like another freestanding, could be a townhouse for all we know, but obviously, it's in very poor structural condition and rotting and all of that, so that's part of the reason. Plus, there's all kinds of encroachments on the setbacks of that particular, structure that we're demolishing. So,
I think the issue is that the integration of the building, it comes into play when you're converting into an in-law suite, which is.
But it's not like a set, we have the ability to alter that condition. And a situation where you take what's there now, which clearly doesn't look like it either, and try to, it's a hard thing to try to take what's there and make it look like a single, and what's there right now kind of is a hodgepodge of stuff, right? So it's not like you're working with something that already looks like a single
It's
family.
on the back.
It's one of the asterisk ones.
A 0.3 has
Yeah,
photos,
I don't,
A 0.3 has a photo of
Right,
the,
How
existing.
many,
Well, I'm just looking at the existing, forget the proposed, right? I mean, just looking at the existing.
So we're
I don't think you're
improving
ever
it in
gonna-
many ways, and that's,
Okay, can I ask a question, please, through you, Mr. Chairman? How many people are going to live? You said
Doesn't
that it's going to be more than one family in this big house? Because from what you said, this gentleman and his wife and somebody else.
Right, so
What I'm
Well,
getting at is, are we
it's
gonna
not
have a
up to us, really.
multifamily here or what?
it's, they're all one family. It's his daughter, her husband,
Oh,
and
okay.
his other daughter and her husband, and maybe some children, grandchildren.
Yes, I have 4 children and 5 grandchildren. The Latin American culture love need to get everything to happen. Yeah, that is the dream, make a big house.
You're very patient.
In this neighborhood.
I mean, we're working with what's existing, right? So
Okay.
I guess, you know, it's gotta keep the appearance of a single-family house. But I would say what's there now doesn't have the appearance of a single-family house, so you'd want it to be better than what's there now. And, you know, I think actually it's, I mean, look at the actual pictures of that house, it's tough. You don't also wanna make something look, I mean, that house needs work, so.
Right, and so when you buy a house like that, under the existing zoning, you have the choice, either fix it up or tear it down and replace it with something else. And what they're coming in for, asking is, they bought it, tear it down, but come in with something different, and, the way I look at it is, it's a two-family, it's being created as a two-family house. It's being called an in-law, but it looks as a separate house attached to a large house.
I'm not disagreeing, but I think what's there now looks like that anyways,
But
so.
we're not dealing with that.
Right.
Right, but
In other words, this looks like to me.
we're just
a separate
talking
house.
appearance of the house.
Right.
You know, so the appearance right now, I mean, they have, you know, it would be hard to keep in the appearance of a single-family house when the existing appearance doesn't look like a single-family house, is all I'm
Tearing
saying.
it down though.
They're tearing down a piece of it. Right, that's right, so you would think the idea would be
the
to
end.
make that new piece look
Okay.
as much as possible like a
In the end,
single-family
let's
house.
assuming they did a facelift on the main house. Let's just assume,
Well,
rather.
don't go there.
and-
I don't think we should make
All right.
assumptions at all. I think what we have before
This
us
looks like
is a plan, and for the first issue is for the in-law apartment, that's what we're dealing with.
Right,
Correct.
yeah, on the existing
And the
house
existing-
and
the
adding the
question
proposed in-law.
is that, does it meet the requirements of the zoning bylaw for an in-law apartment? And I think we can take a look at it and interpret that.
You know, I mean,
Yeah.
so-
Right, no,
they
right, that's
certainly-
what we should be, yeah, right.
Right, and the biggest thing is that even under the existing house, there could be a sleeping area where they have a single common kitchen with a space, no in-law, they could build it almost as a matter of right, and not have a second kitchen.
Of course they
Until
could,
su-
yeah. Yeah.
Until such time as they afforded to build the main house anew, at which time, then if they needed a second kitchen,
Number two.
I mean, they could do the exact phasing that they're looking for and install, or come to get a permit and install the second kitchen in the in-law area after the main house is rebuilt. And they could live together in a common kitchen, and eat meals together in the existing Phase One house.
It's a
You know
unique
what?
situation
Two.
than the other ones because of the way it's currently comprised. Right, but
The bo-
it isn't a single-family house.
The bottom line for me is when I think of an in-law, I think of an in-law as an extension of a house. This, to me, looks like another
Yeah.
house.
Right, then that's the
Right.
question, right, is.
That is where I'm coming from.
Right, but
And
I.
so we have a house here, whether we fix it or we leave it as it is, no matter. And we have this other house, which
Right,
to me looks like two.
right, so, and I would say, yeah,
And on
there's other
Rustic Road?
requirements, and I think
Yeah.
they meet those, and the question is, you know, is that one there? And my only take was, normally we have these, it's an existing house.
Right.
There's space in the house, they wanna convert it, they wanna do a little addition. Here you have a unique structure that already looks like one house, and they built a house off the back, and it's attached, and who knows how. Look at the existing pictures of the house. It already has that appearance that it's not a
Doesn't it-
single-family house.
What
Not
the-
to say you should keep that, but is there a way to design it in a way that it makes it look more like a single-family home than what's there now? And if it, to me, if you could make it look more like it, then
Doesn't B2
you're accomplishing.
B2.
But it isn't it's a single-family dwelling now. You have the right to do it.
Well, It says within a single-family dwelling, and if you look at this,
But it
is
is.
it,
It's not.
it says within a single-family dwelling.
Right.
But if you look at this, it has the appearance of a separate
Right,
dwelling
that's my
attached
point.
to the existing dwelling. Not
But it's
within.
still- it's still
Not with- I use
within.
the word attached, not within.
Not within.
Within.
It's no, it is still, they're attached. It's, like I
It
said,
doesn't
look
say
at,
attached, it says
Says
within.
But-
Within.
it is within it is, right now, it's a single-family dwelling, right?
Within.
Yes.
And you're allowed to make additions to it, when we've done them before, as long as we've said it keeps the appearance of a single-family dwelling. We've had ones where they've
Well,
done.
in the end, this doesn't anyway.
Doesn't keep the,
That's a different conversation, which is, we're having, but I think it's, it's still a single-family dwelling, however you slice it up, it's not.
We agree, it's
Yeah.
a single-family dwelling, but the in-law does not,
That's right.
what's, the word is?
within.
Within.
The idea,
is
yeah, but
within.
we've had these before where they've added on to it. They've made
We've
it.
added on to something, I think the one on Bullock Street, that huge house they added on.
Yeah,
Remember
that huge
That's
one,
a
yeah.
different thing. That flows from the same house.
Right.
This looks like another house
Correct.
that's
Right.
just
So what I'm
mildly
saying is,
attached.
I don't disagree.
Yeah.
I'm saying the existing house, it has that appearance already. So we're not taking it's like a colonial and adding on to it. Look at the pictures of that existing house. It's like a hodgepodge. So I'm not, then they have the right to,
They have
build.
the right to take what they have. and
They
fix
have
it.
the right to build
Fix it.
this.
And fix it.
They could build this.
Yes.
Just
they
not
could.
as an in-law. All they're asking for is the right to make this addition an in-law part. And they, I'm not saying it does or doesn't, they don't
Yeah.
have the right to do that? I mean, then.
I think
I
it looks
don't-
like a separate
I'm just
house.
reading B2 and it's not,
It's
in
a
there.
separate house.
yeah.
I don't
Stuck
see how
on the
you could
side.
say it's within.
Well,
Within
The
means-
the other part is, okay, so the one area that I'm struggling with in terms of the certificate of occupancy of the main house, because right, we can say, if we were to grant this, we have no idea really what is going to be
Yes.
built as the main house. We have no idea, because it is at best a rough idea. So what I'm saying is, that issue, which is specifically required, not starred, that we can change in terms of there being a certificate of occupancy of the main house, could be resolved by allowing this entire thing, not allow, I mean, they can build all of this structure as a matter of right, and while they have this configuration here, okay, the people sleeping in this new part of this single house can come down and use the kitchen of the existing house until such time as they go here, right? When they demolish this, then as a matter of right, they can put a kitchen in there. And it's only when they go to do this with a second kitchen that they have to come back in front of us. They have a legal way to.
Now you're trying to manage their projects.
No,
That's
I'm
right.
not. I'm
Yes.
saying that,
You're saying they can build it, but no kitchen in there, and I think that's
Yeah,
trying to
we
manage
should-
how.
Yeah, they can. I mean, that's
no,
what they're only here.
I'm just saying, they have
That's
that
sort of-
right. In other words, they have ways of managing without us having to deviate from the intent of the bylaw, is to look at the in-law against the existing house, not a theoretical house. And that's what I'm uncomfortable with. And there is means for them
Okay.
to,
Okay.
whether I come up with it or somebody else comes up
I
with
don't
it,
think we should come up
ideas.
with it, let the applicant.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Right, but
Absolutely.
they
I'm
have
just
the
saying.
right to, if this was designed differently, they certainly have the right to come here and ask for an in-law.
If it was designed differently.
Right, no, I'm not, but we're having the discussion on how
we
it's
agree on a lot.
I think we
designed.
do too, but
But I think I'm
I'm having a hard time with the fact that it doesn't look like an in-law. It looks like
two
another
houses.
house.
Right, so I'm
Right.
just making a case that requirement, we have the right as a board to alter it as a condition, and I'm only saying in a certain situation, which is, it's in here, and we have that right, we could look at what's there now, and maybe there's a situation where what's there now doesn't look like a single family, and we could get something that actually looks more like a single family, that's
Right.
all. Yeah, so,
And I'm saying that I would be more comfortable if I had a situation where I had an existing building with a CO and a proposed in-law that looked different that I could actually see. And I could see what the actual difference is and determine whether, well, it doesn't look exactly like a single family, but it doesn't look like a duplex, or it doesn't look
Well,
like
let me
two-
take my
two
argument a step
apartments.
further. They could come in right now on the existing building and ask for that existing house to be an in-law suite, and the appearance of it means nothing. It's not, it's only for a proposed addition. So they could come in here now on this structure that already doesn't look like, right? You're telling me they can't do that?
They can't do that, as long as it looks as one unit.
It doesn't, no, it's only on a proposed addition. A proposed addition as part of the section must keep the appearance of a single-family house.
It doesn't look like a single.
I know, but that's only for an addition. They could, there was nothing that preventing them from taking what doesn't look like a single family now and asking for that addition to be a part of
An
an in-law.
accessory in-law suite must be located within a family dwelling.
I'm just saying, it is right now. If they didn't want to do any addition, and you looked at that first plan, that, they're not changing anything. That whole structure is a single-family dwelling right now.
Right.
And if they just took that addition part and didn't do anything to it except change the inside of it, it doesn't matter what the outside looks like. It's not in here, because it's within that single-family structure.
I
That's
think
all
what
I'm
you're saying is, there are some single-family houses
that already don't look
which
single-family.
were built in a modular kind of look.
Yeah.
But collectively, they may appear to be a single-family house as opposed to a row of condos.
Well, let's suppose somebody had a single-family house, and they had a lot next to them, and they said, oh, I think I'll have an in-law. But instead of adding on to either side, I'll put a house right here with a little, you know.
Right, yeah. I mean, it's gotta look like a I'm not disagreeing, all I'm
Okay.
saying is, they have the right to come in with what's there now, right? Which is just a single-family house, which doesn't look like a single-family house right now. But they have, but if they wanted to convert space in that to an in-law, it doesn't matter that it doesn't look like a single-family. It's only when you go to do an addition to it that the board has to make sure it stays like a single-family. And most situations, we'd want to make sure if it, like you said, you would avoid something that looks different.
Right.
But because we have that ability to alter it, there may be a situation, and I'm not saying this is or isn't, that would warrant it, because if we had the opportunity to make it look more like a single family than what's there now, I think that would be a good thing, but.
But that's not the job of the zoning board, that's the job of the
No,
applicant.
but it's because it's a requirement here, where we could have a discussion and say, you know, we're not, we don't think right now it looks like this. Do you want to come back, make some
Exactly.
changes?
Exactly.
Right, and
I
that's
agree
all I'm
with that.
saying, is that
And-
there could be a because I don't think we're ever gonna get to this structure looking like a cohesive single family, because we're starting off with something that doesn't look like a cohesive single family structure, that's all I'm
I think
saying.
the applicant has a lot of work to do on this, to come back to the board with a plan that is different than this. I'm not gonna say, I'm not gonna manage it for them.
It's not, I mean, we also, look at, we're, you know, trying to, you know, they've asked for something that's part of it is, it's actually a condition, if they do an addition, it's gotta be appearance of a single family. I think that's the discussion we're having, and if we're saying as a board, we don't feel like we're there yet, but there could be, it's all I'm saying, is there may,
Is
you know,
somebody
there could
living in
be.
this main house now?
They're living there now, yes.
And do you live in the addition as well, or?
It's more like a accessory space, do you use that addition right now for anything?
No, storage.
Just storage, yeah. The original consideration was to refurbish that
Right. and
existing
then-
bump out and
right,
turn
without
that
doing
into the
addition.
in-law suite, but it was in just such bad shape that it
Yeah, I
wasn't
mean,
worthwhile.
the pictures, I think, do justice of
Yeah.
the condition of the house. That's all I'm saying is,
I guess,
Could I ask Jim what his thoughts are on this? I'm just curious.
I tend to agree with the board. To me, it really doesn't look like an in-law. I also think that if the applicant was directed to go back and relook at this, may also eliminate the potential conflict with the side yard versus rear yard setback. So we could accomplish 2 goals.
Well, but I think they've
Okay, that's
designed it
okay.
in a way that it complies with the rear yard setback.
According to the building commissioner, there's the disagreement, but.
Right.
I think there's from what I've read, is there's a disagreement, but they've designed it in a way that respects his interpretation, they just for
Correct.
future, discussions, they want that interpretation. I guess I'm just back to the same thing, is that if they did, if that outbuilding, if that building was in decent enough shape and they could renovate it, they could, the appearance of it isn't a factor, really, that we look at, because there's not a proposed addition, so.
Well-
And it doesn't look like it now.
But that's also a what if. I mean, the board can only look at the application before it.
That's right, the what if,
But
yeah.
it's just still the point, what's there now we're starting with something that doesn't look like a single family, that's all.
I think
And
we
that-
should continue to have
I
the
do.
applicant work on this.
I do too.
And have Dave,
come back.
Dave come
And-
too.
And have Dave here,
And
yeah.
there's also, I'll just say, it's a 20, this isn't, well, it's 20 feet off of Coney Street. And it's not as if it's 20 feet off of a quiet,
No, it's a
And it's
busy.
a- it's a
cul-de-sac.
very
all
busy,
get-out
right, it
street.
is.
So,
You have the mall and you
So-
have,
so,
It's by
the other
Siemens.
place, Siemens and the mall.
but I think hopefully the applicant has heard the numerous concerns from the board on this, and that this is not,
Yeah,
Right.
No, I think this all stems from the sequence that we're dealing with. This is out of the ordinary, right?
yes,
It's-
it is.
We want to build an in-law, then we want to demolish the main house and may not rebuild it, or we don't know what it looks like, so it's very difficult to get your arms around.
Right.
Whether
but
this
it's
is an
also, you
in-
never know, right.
No,
it's gonna
understood.
Yeah.
So I think I think
Yeah, we-
I'm inclined to look at this as an in-law with respect to what's existing.
Existing.
And
Yeah.
if the plans could reflect that, then
Yeah.
I would be able to evaluate the in-law suite vis-à-vis what exists and may exist well into the future.
Right, and I think the challenge they have is that designing something that makes it look like a single now may be different
Right.
than what would be
Okay.
in the future, right? And that's kind of why they
Right.
probably started there, to say, here's what it, because it may look like a single in the future, and it may not, but I mean, it's two
But I-
different,
That's what,
But I
yeah.
do think
Sets of,
Dave, I think that Dave should be here,
Yes,
should
I
be here,
agree,
because,
yeah.
we have
he,
never
this
had
was his
something like
bylaw,
this.
so,
Huh?
this was his bylaw,
Yep.
yeah,
Well-
so, I mean, he's the one who, this
Well,
was.
that's why I'm
added by
saying
the-
he should be, we've never been faced with something that we're, we want to make a
motion that
decision in
usually comes, yeah.
anticipatory of something, so I think.
Yeah, I just want to echo that as well, is that, I mean, conditions on things that are relatively known, but there are some uncertainties that we want to address through a condition is one thing, but when a large majority of this is speculative,
That's right.
Right.
I get uncomfortable.
So do
So
I.
I would tend to be more comfortable with more a certain plan now. And I also agree, single-family homes, I've lived in single-family homes, which are very modular design. I think, so the fact that it's not one large square rectangle, to me, is not the only factor which determines a single-family appearance. Things such as 2 separate front doors, are a factor to me. The way the building, I mean, because, on an extension, you might have, windows. You may have a back door on an extension, but you wouldn't necessarily have
We have like
all
a
the
side door.
elements.
So
Yeah,
why,
Side door,
yeah,
things
no,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
why would this section of the bylaw allow for 2 separate landings just for the in-law suite? I mean, I'm trying to imagine, this is being allowed in this section of the zoning code with 1 front and 1 back, obviously if it's gonna be 2 entrances for the
And
in-law
people
suite
have-
itself.
People have a front-facing
It's
main
two
door
exteriors,
and a front-facing smaller kitchen door. The point being, I mean, you're an architect, I mean, so you're gonna see, these are the types of elements that we're gonna be looking for. To Matt's point, I'm not necessarily looking for one big rectangle, but I am looking for something that is gonna tell me that as it is built, from the day that we permit it, whether, so most likely the existing building, that if I or anybody else driving down the street looks at it, it looks like a single-family house, not, a multifamily house.
Well, I think what I'm concluding here is that it's gonna be impossible to propose an in-law suite that's 2 stories where there's a period of time where the existing house stays and the in-law suite is built and look like a single-family house.
Okay, I built my house
I'm just
in
playing the devil's
Connecticut.
advocate because.
I'm gonna tell, no, I built my house in Connecticut, it was a single-family home. I built an extension next to it, was 2 stories, so it was this shape, okay? There was only a main door on the single floor. The extension which was 2 stories, had a big picture window in the front. So, can you have a building that has multiple constructions, 1 2-story, 1 that is a single story and still look like a single family? Yes, I built one. So, huh?
Personally?
Personally,
All right, nice.
yes,
You want
on the
hands?
roof,
All right.
throwing hammers, yes.
Howling hammers.
Yeah, that's exactly how your roof.
Did you see me going around double?
All right,
So may I ask one more question? Being that they want to use the season for construction to move forward as quickly as possible, if I may ask your opinion on, like you said, I'm an architect and I'm designing as I see fit here, but the image number 2 on A0.1, where we have just the in-law suite addition with the existing house, I guess that entrance to the in-law suite would have to go away in order to make this look like.
I don't think there's an answer we're gonna tell you. I think it's kind of, there's some work on the plans, especially hearing some of the other board members to make it look more like one single. Like my only point was, I don't think you could ever get there on this, right? To make it look like a traditional single family, but you certainly could do things like Craig was saying to make,
that's right.
to get a lot closer to that than what's there now maybe. But I don't think there's an
That's
answer
true.
that as a board, we're gonna say, if you change X, Y, and Z, we're there. I think we have to see it.
The other thing is, we could vote on it and just, I think you're being very kind, saying we're gonna continue it, let the applicant work on it. Because otherwise, we could just vote on what's before us and come to a determination, which I don't think that's the goal of the board.
So, I hear what you're saying, I don't
No,
think it's.
we can't sit here and tell him, as a zoning board of appeals, we can't say,
Here's what
do
we'll
this
approve.
or do that. It's on him to come back with it.
Of course, no, in terms of giving them guidance, I was saying, I don't think there's any one thing that we could say, here's the main issue, get rid of the door, and I think we gotta see kind of
No,
a new
that's
plan.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And even the phasing of
The
it's
phasing,
unusual.
that's a challenge, and so, like I said, once after phase 2, it may look like a single, but that's not what we're here for, and,
So,
yeah.
I basically have to make it look like a single in phase 1 and phase 2.
But we're only here for phase 1 technically, and I know unless there was a building permit filed for the whole thing, like you were saying, and there was a whole application, which I'm not even sure, how that works, because it's not,
Before us.
but, it's not a single, it's not an existing single family, but, if there was a permit for the whole thing, maybe that's a different situation, and we would look at it, I just don't know how, it's not what's before us, right, so.
Right, I'd be
So
more
I would-
comfortable with what's before us, and certainly, I have seen buildings that got constructed over time, where one part of the building is of a certain style, and another part of a building is another style, but it still looks like one single family.
Yeah, it's,
That you know.
it's not easy, but I think you maybe, a suggestion is, on the phasing is maybe, have a discussion with your client and the building zoning enforcement officer, and maybe it's, because I think we're saying, we're just looking at phase 1 here, so, I mean, if something was different, but, your addition for phase 1 has to look like we're saying a single family, more like, if not a single family, so. That's the consensus, better than, like John was saying, to close it and have a vote on it as is the
No.
opportunity to
Let's
kind of
make a motion to continue.
come up with something, I mean,
If he wants to.
Does the
Yeah.
applicant
that-
wanna continue?
yeah.
Do
it's
you
up
wanna
to-
continue?
I think we have to.
Yeah. What are we
I'll make a
looking at for
motion then.
dates?
When?
To continue.
We have 3 new ones next one for May 16th, but June 6th just has 1900 Main Street.
Oh, that's the, our friends there.
Your friend, not
No,
mine.
Amy's friend.
Not mine.
But I'm not in this.
I made a motion.
All right, June 6th then, or no? I mean, I think you need some, I mean, 2 weeks would be
No, that's
pretty
too
quick to
fast.
come back here, yeah. And we'd want Dave here on June 6th,
Yeah.
since it's also an
Because we
appeal.
haven't even discussed
The
the other
appeal,
part. We
yeah.
haven't discussed
And I
the
don't think there's a
side,
point
the
right
sideline
now.
setback.
Which can go away if he designs it.
It's not even an issue, actually, believe it or not.
Glad we're here then.
20 feet
Yeah.
from Gormley Street.
So they actually they've designed it supposedly from what I read, so that.
Does June 6th seem okay?
To me, it is.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
For me.
You have a second on that?
So you made a motion to
Second.
continue on June 6th, 7 PM in this room? Yeah, okay.
June
All
6th.
right, that was a motion. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
June 6th at 7.
Thank you.
We probably
All
shouldn't
right,
mention that's
thanks for
D-Day,
your
right?
patience. You're up
Probably
next.
shouldn't mention that that's D-Day.
That's what?
D-Day.
Ah.
Could.
All right, our last case of this evening, waiting patiently all night long.
Another variance, John.
It's an application from Hugh and Christine Derry, case number 10-18, with respect to the property at 20 Maryland's Way, zoning district RB. It's an application for an amendment to a variance under section 6B1 of the zoning bylaws to allow the construction of a 2-car garage attached to the existing house. It's all yours.
Good evening.
Yes,
Thanks for
I
having
hope you
us.
learned a lot sitting there.
Yeah,
Did you know the Bruins were
Oh.
losing?
they are down 3-1.
That's bad.
So
Murphy
taping
was
it?
on this. Craig, you were on this.
Oh, yeah?
address is 20 Maryland's Way. It's up off of 1A. We're at the end of the cul-de-sac. We've owned and lived this house for 22 years, going on 22 years.
At least he knows when he bought it.
In 2005,
About 22 years.
2005, we got a variance on the rear setback to extend our kitchen in the main house. You guys have a copy of the RLS stamped plan. Shows 24-foot by 6-foot bump out in the back. Our proposed addition is to construct a garage, 2-car garage on the left side of the house. The house is left justified on the property because we have an easement. We split an easement to the utility company behind us on the right side. Also, we have our chimney is on the left side of the existing house. So we can't compress the garage any more than we have already.
Is Dan there?
Ideally, we were looking for 30 feet, and, you know, to minimize that side impact, we cut it back to 26, but that's the minimum that we can go to install a 2-car garage because of that chimney, on the left side of the house. Our next door neighbor has a 2-car garage. House to the left of us has a 2-car garage, so we're not really improving beyond what they have on that side of the house. So basically, our request is for an extension. The other thing is on the rear, because of when we did the addition back in 2005, 2006, the entrance into the house is in the rear. It's in that footprint that we were granted, in that 6-foot footprint that we were granted. So, and we can't, it would be major reconstruction to reconstruct the house to move the garage back to the property line there, or back to the setback line. So hence, that's the reason we're looking for the extension of the existing variance that we have across that back line. And on the side, we're looking for a 14.8 square foot little triangle variance on the side setback. We've shown the plans to all of our neighbors. There's 10 houses on the street. We've shown the plans to all of our neighbors, and in your application, we have signatures from all of them. they're all excited about it, so hopefully we can go do it. Maggie Walker, I met with her a couple weeks ago. She had an issue on impervious.
It's on one, that's right.
On the impervious surface issue, I don't know if you guys saw that, but we did go back and we made the appropriate changes, so the plan meets the requirements of the impervious surfaces. We were able to stay under that 14.8, we were able to stay under the 15%.
You did your homework. You got a
Little
letter
bit.
from
I'm a civil
town engineer
engineer, so-
before we, yeah, what was that?
I'm a civil engineer.
Oh, all
so-
right.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
He knows how to do
Because
his
we have a
homework.
letter from the town engineer, and would have read all the comments, but it's not worth it, because it says the comments is considered resolved on both of them.
Yeah.
One was the impervious, and one was the, the
Was a
proposed
recharge.
addition. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So are you also putting in an addition to the right?
Yes, sir, but
At
that's
this
on
time?
the, that's within the.
Right.
That's within the, yeah,
So
that's,
that's-
we're putting a 20 by 24 great room.
Okay.
There'll only be one door on the front of the house. And so both additions are only single
Not gonna move
story.
a family into the great room?
Yeah, no, no. Trying to get rid of the kids.
I know.
So they leave and you build more space? I don't know if that's gonna work.
Party time,
Bloody time.
That's right.
Now they come back.
yeah.
Less
I hope
vacuuming.
they do.
All right, well, thank you. So I guess we're here on the new side yard setback and the extension of the previously granted rear yard variance. Well, you mentioned the town engineers, see, do we have any other comments? Fire department had no comment, planning board had no comment, and conservation had no comment. I'll just say, but it doesn't look like we have anybody from the audience here tonight, but as you stated, for the record, we have a letter, signed by
Many humans
your
from Maryland
neighbors,
Drive
somewhere in my
way.
package here, yep. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 signatures on it. So that's always helpful, thank you. Although it says that we'll take this matter up in January 201 blank, so it's like a blanket, they'll approve anything as long as it's whatever you want to ask for, you'll approve it, right? As long as it's before 2020.
Oh, I didn't know that.
All right. Engineers, you know? They'll get you down to the 100th of a foot, but, you know, they'll leave the blank space on the date.
This was that was a boilerplate.
They've already been, it's already built up to this point. Correct. They're not increasing the non.
Not us guys.
Yeah, we didn't, I didn't give you anything.
Exactly.
I'm just
They're extending.
messing with you after the end of a long night. All right. It seems pretty straightforward on I don't know which one you want to take up first, but on the new, I mean, I think the same reasoning on the old variance on the lot shape applies to both. And, you know, I guess, you know, could you build a single car garage there? Yeah, but if, you know, all the houses on the street have 2-car garages, it's a hardship to have a single
No, you have a real one.
car garage there, so
Why do I not have a real one?
I have no issue with it.
Once again.
Seems like the.
Just a quick question for you, through you,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, yeah,
So I see Boston Edison is your neighbor to the rear?
Yeah, it's Spectra Energy now. They, it's the Algonquin gas line.
So, but what's constructed there? What is
There's
in
a-
that area?
There's a 30-inch gas line, underground gas line behind our house, and then there's a, Eversource has a power station, has
then
a
a power
substation,
Substation,
yeah,
okay.
behind that.
All right, so directly behind you, it's quite a bit of distance
It's all
before
woods.
you get to any homes or other
Yeah.
It would-
residential use.
It's
It doesn't say
probably a
4B.
third of a mile
Doesn't
to
say
McDonald
variance,
Circle,
doesn't say-
so.
Okay.
Amendment to a variance, section 6B1.
But aren't we doing 4B? Okay. I'm not losing it yet.
What does the application say?
4B.
Oh,
Under
but it's,
6B1.
no, this is the old decision.
Oh, that's old?
Yeah.
Mine
So
just
it's-
says nothing, that's why I'm confused.
Yeah, I attached a copy of our
The old
granted,
one, yeah.
our
The
granted
Hers says something
variance.
different too.
All right.
These are all the same.
This
they're all
seems
printed
like,
the same.
I thought there was two
Yeah.
things, sorry. I thought there was two things.
Freaking me out.
The
Is it-
rear,
Sorry.
so,
Do I have hives?
No, I
pretty
thought there was two
straightforward.
things.
Any comments?
It's hard. No comments from me. The comment I should just shut up is what my comment is.
Is that,
I
is
thought
that
there
a
was two
motion?
things.
Is that a motion? Do you have a second?
Everyone's gonna second that one. No, I thought there was two things. That's all.
It is two things, right? It's two parts to it, right? We have to, grant an extension of the rear yard setback previously as a variance, and we have to grant a new variance for the side yard setback. So, all right. Right. Well, Tim, do you have any comments on this one?
No, Mr. Chairman, I think it's fine. I mean, it's a de minimis request. The existing rear yard was already granted previously. It'd be a minor extension. There's nothing back there but woods. I think it's in context with the entire neighborhood, and I would recommend that the board grant it.
Attention wise.
Right. And then for the applicant, if they didn't have that extension, it would be a hardship to reconfigure, I mean, if, to have to reconfigure that whole back area is what you're,
The entrance, but yeah.
the entrance. So the entrance will stay in the garage there. No?
Well, the entrance into the house from the garage.
Yeah, no, it's in the
Yeah,
back
yeah.
of the garage.
It will be in the back,
Yeah, right,
yes,
yeah.
I'm
We'll stay
sorry.
there, yeah. Yeah, because if you had the garage pulled forward,
Run into
you'd
the
have,
chimney.
it'd be, what?
Run into the chimney.
Right.
Yeah, right, it'd be hard, it'd be, a pretty big
Right.
change, yeah. And then on the side, a standard, you
Got easements.
garage, and you have, I imagine those neighbors at number 19 are also have signed.
Yes,
Yeah,
Steve.
that-
Signature.
Yeah.
Should have taken his case first.
That's what I thought too.
All right. Pretty straightforward.
Make a motion to close?
Any
Everybody
other
ready?
comments?
No comments.
Any other
please.
comments? No?
Motion to close.
Motion and,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Dutch was making a motion to.
Oh,
No,
so now we deliberate.
I can't read this, I don't think.
Your other motion.
And that's gonna be
No,
for
so,
both of them?
Yeah. No,
No, I'm telling you, it's not correct. I'm not losing it.
it's,
Not losing it.
it's,
What the application said is what I
right.
advertised it as. Is this what you?
What I read is,
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's wrong with that?
No, because I thought he said it was two different things we had to
well,
approve.
I mean, we have to,
I just wanted to.
I really don't think we have to approve I mean, it's fine if we approve the back, but it's already existing, and he's not increasing the non-conforming
Right.
nature on the back setbacks.
He's not.
If we want to approve it, that's
well, it's
fine.
extending it, but that's, I don't know, doesn't matter.
I'm okay approving the how they applied for it, approving the garage, as per the plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
the setbacks, the
Right.
variance from the
They're already there.
setbacks, rear and side, are clearly articulated in the
Right.
plan,
Yeah.
so
That's
I
good.
don't
No, I
need to-
just didn't wanna make
Yeah,
the
I
motion.
mean, well,
okay
yeah,
with
That's all.
right. It's an amendment to a variance.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
So I'm making a motion for an amendment for a variance under section 6B of the zoning bylaws to allow construction of a two-car garage attached to the existing house. It's an application from Hugh and Christine Deary, case 10-18, 20 Maryland's Way, Walpole, Mass.
And Susan, just to clarify, it's a motion to grant the amendment, correct?
Yes,
Yes.
Okay.
second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, so I think we'll use the same language that was in the other one on the lot shape. See how you guys worded it.
We had it somewhere here.
Yeah.
A cone of light. Dan's on it.
Yeah.
Showing substantial as a result of the shape of the lot and placement of the dwelling on the lot.
And the location of the easement, the utility
Yeah.
easement. So.
And a note that they have a letter of support from all their abutters.
In terms of derogating to the intent of the bylaw, I think
And you can't, it has to do it a certain way because of the
it's
chimney.
evidenced that it doesn't derogate from the intent of the bylaw by the support,
There's a chimney in
near
the back.
unanimous support of the neighbors, or the support of the many neighbors. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Let's check this out.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
So the decision.
Sorry we made you wait. It was a
Just
confusing
mechanics, I
night.
don't know if you know this part, but, so the decision was made tonight. So the board has, up to 14 days to actually draft the decision and file it with the clerk. And then there's an appeal period where the many people who are here in opposition, you know, have the opportunity to appeal our decision. And then, you know, but it's up to you. I mean, you know, you'll get a copy once you can check with the office, when the decision is made or drafted. And you'll get a copy in any event, when it's stamped in and mailed to you. And then it's just a question of whether you wanna proceed and run the risk that it be appealed,
Oh, this is for
or
next week.
wait until the appeal expires and then proceed.
It's next week. I don't know why you have next week.
Procedure.
All right, thank you much.
Good night.
Minutes?
Minutes?
I have the executive session from April 4th.
Okay.
The selectmen from just it's not a substantive matter, we have a request from the selectmen on May 15th, if we could meet with them, regarding Wall Street development there in Burns Ave.
Tuesday night?
Yeah, it's a selectmen meeting.
Which night?
Executive session.
No, I don't think so. I don't know.
Must be.
They didn't, wasn't, the request didn't say executive session, so I don't wanna
They just want
tell
us
you
to be
executive
there, yeah.
session, it could be, but the request was that.
What time?
I haven't seen that, haven't seen that.
Yeah, I haven't heard them mention it either. What time?
So it must be, I mean,
What time?
that was during their hearing, 7 PM.
Yeah, I
That's
would
all
imagine that.
I've gotten very little information.
Next Tuesday?
May 15th.
No. What's a Tuesday?
That's gonna be tough.
They didn't say we had to all be there.
No, it's okay.
There's there's information on Burns Ave, I think they wanna,
They like to hear from us.
Said he's got bad dirt, he got caught.
no,
Did you know that, Bob?
What's that?
He got bad dirt.
Oh, I heard.
Three different.
Surprise, surprise, huh?
different.
That's nothing to do with what happened up at Boyden. He built
We're
the
still
place.
on, right?
Thank you.
Yeah, we still have business.
yeah, hold on.
We can't say anything. Be careful. All right, so
Let me
selectmen's
just make, let me
meeting,
see
7
if there was a
o'clock.
time. It was just, it would be after, yeah, it is executive session, I'm sorry. That's what they, the request,
Would
yeah.
have to be, yeah.
So I just, I don't know if, I don't think we all have to be there as long as we have, it's not, I don't even,
It'd be
yeah,
like
I mean, I
6.
think, what?
Is that 6 then? Because it's executive? Is it before the
They,
regular?
it said after 7, so I
Oh,
don't.
after 7, okay.
I just, if we could, if there's at least
You know what? when I
3 of
went
us to
out-
go, 4 of us to go,
Yeah.
then we're good. I
Well-
could go.
I can go. It would help me to know more specifically
Right.
what the time is.
Let's
And
find out more stuff and
We,
text us.
I have,
it said after 7. That was the original request. The original request was for last week, but I couldn't have gone, so. And it was like they asked me 2 days before, so. it
Yeah.
wasn't-
Just find out more information
All
on
right.
it and text us.
All right,
Okay.
all right, so it sounds like we will have
We can
people who
pull
could
this
go,
off.
okay. Because
Yes.
I could go, and it sounds like you two could go, and maybe one other
Okay.
person could get there, okay. All right, sorry, just wanna make sure, so. I'll let the Board of Selectmen know.
And could we, ask them more specifically on their agenda for that night, whether it's gonna be after 7 at
Yes,
10,
yes,
or if it's
yeah.
after 7 at 7:05. Makes a difference for me. I have
Yes.
something else going on for work.
Okay,
I-
all right.
They probably have a very specific time, because my guess is town council will be there.
Yes,
Yeah,
I would-
definitely.
I would think.
all right, I'll get the actual time.
Don't do it up first,
Okay,
I bet.
yeah.
Get
you would
Alana
think,
out of
yeah.
Unless she has other stuff.
executive sessions are just at the end.
At the end?
Which
Well,
means,
that's-
it's,
At the
well, it's kinda
beginning, so she can
open-ended.
go.
The end could be 8 and it could be 11, right? Yeah,
Yeah, let's find out more
let's
stuff.
find out more. Okay, let's do the minutes.
All right,
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to accept the executives of April 4th. Has everybody read them? They're quick and easy. John's
All
already
right.
done.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, April 18th. All right, I wasn't there, so I'll count on you guys.
So I had a few, on the first line,
Good,
Yeah, the 18th.
change that to the 18th, yeah.
can't spell.
First paragraph, the open session, the line that starts added to the infiltration trench. Starts there.
Yep.
Along the retaining wall, and then I would insert the words to increase its width
Okay.
from 12 inches to 24. And at the end of the third full paragraph, add the same phrases in the previous paragraph, subject to the conditions
Okay.
discussed. And I know that there had been some discussion about the 44% versus the 49% impervious area. And I guess I didn't look at the tape of this, but I believe the ultimate number was 49, if I'm
49.
correct. Okay. So,
It's actually on the plan.
as on the plan itself,
So
yeah.
that all has to be changed to 40, and it's on the back page too. Right?
Yep.
And then the very last sentence on that, first paragraph on the second page,
Mhm.
just strike the word following, subject to the conditions discussed.
Okay. Got it.
Yep. And that's all I had on that.
We'll let you make the motion, Bob. You're the man.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the meeting of April 18th, 2018, subject to the changes just discussed.
Second?
All in favor? I can't do that.
Aye. What?
He's gotta do that, right?
No.
Abstain, I wasn't.
All in favor?
One, two, three. All right.
Let's move it along.
Yeah.
All in favor? Aye.
Abstain.
Opposed, abstained, so carried.
Abstain. Yeah.
Make a motion to close the public hearing of, May the 2nd.
All in favor?
Aye.
Beauty.
Aye.